Hey, what's up? I'm Mike Rosica. I wanted to chat real quick about how we're going to be releasing this podcast. And since both Drew Paul Bell and myself have pretty active YouTube channels, what we've decided to do is to split it up. So, on the Young Architect YouTube channel, I'm going to post all of the episodes that are even numbered. So, episode 0, episode 2, 4. I'm going to post all the even numbered episodes. And Drew Paul Bell's going to take all the odd numbered episodes and post them on his channel. And so, to make it easy so you're not bouncing back and forth all these different episodes, I would first say both subscribe to both the Young Architect and the Drew Paul Bell YouTube channels. But what both of us are going to do is we've created a playlist on each of our YouTube channels called the Mike and Drew Architecture Podcast. And in that playlist, it's got all the episodes listed. And even though Drew Paul Bell, posted episode 3 on his channel, I can still add that to the playlist and have it sequential. And to make it even easier, I've created links, 2 links. I have youngarchitect.com/Mike, which will take you to the playlist on Young Architect channel, and youngarchitect.com/Drew, which will take you to the same playlist on Drew's channel. In some ways, it doesn't even matter whose playlist you're watching because they're the same exact videos. And so that's how we're going to do it is, Young Architect will post the even, Drew's got the odd numbers. And then in a couple of weeks down the road, after we get this playlist, this podcast kind of rolling out a little bit faster, we're going to strip the audio. We're just going to take the audio from all these and we're going to actually put it out as a podcast, the same way we publish the Young Architect podcast. We'll post it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. We'll get it out there. But for now, we're just releasing these on YouTube. So that's how we're doing it. And I hope you enjoy the new show. Take care, everyone. What's up? I'm Michael Rosica from youngarchitect.com. I got my buddy here, Mr. Drew Paul Bell, Architect Drew Paul Bell. Welcome back to our podcast.
Yeah, man. Good to be back.
Yeah, Drew, it's been a few weeks since we recorded a podcast. I'm excited to chat with you today. I guess we should get caught
here.
I guess we should just get caught up with what's been going on.
Yeah, man. You had some drama going on with the NCARB stuff. Fill the people in. Let me know what's going on,
dude.
Because I saw you posting everything, but I didn't read through it all.
So what ended up happening was, so I think we recorded a podcast 2 weeks ago. Then I think it was last week or the week before, something like that. You and I, we decided not to record a podcast. You and I were like, we were both crazy. And when Drew and I talked, it was that everyone was freaking out over their exams. And it was I guess it was right after June 1st. It was June 2nd or 3rd. We were supposed to get back to testing and everyone's exams was just getting canceled and canceled and canceled and canceled. And they're like, Mike, we know what's going on and blah, blah, blah. And NCARB wasn't talking. They weren't communicating with anyone. And I was like, I don't want to get involved. I said, I was like, Drew, I don't want to get involved. If I get involved, all hell is going to break loose. And we talked about it. And then after that call, Drew, I think an hour, I thought about it some more, an hour went by. And then I was like, F it, I'm getting involved. And I jumped in and I started working on a video. And I was like a video of all the issues and challenges and problems with NCARB. And I went to freaking town, man. I stayed up all night long working on this video. And then in the morning I recorded it and put it out the door. And then, then they started to so many things happened with all this NCARB drama. And then they finally figured it out and we fixed the problem and solved it. And then I was going to make a part 2 video to kind of follow up. And then NCARB put out this, what happened? They put out a statement about diversity and racism and how they're combating racism. And a piece of it, there was one piece of that statement where it patted themselves on the back for encouraging diversity within their board of directors. And I flipped out. I lost my mind because the NCARB board of directors has been nothing but a bunch of old white guys for the past 10 years. And, you can pat yourselves on the back for diversity. And so all that happened and I was like, F it. I made a part 2 video on that. And I finally got that all done. And then I just I washed my hands with all this NCARB drama. But yeah, that's what I've been working on, Drew. I feel like it's been a whirlwind since I spoke to you last.
Wait, so what was the end result from the stuff that you made? Because you said that you talked to them, right?
Yeah, there was. Okay, so the problem was that back in April, the Prometric created a program called the Essential Client Program. And they had a list, the CISA list of essential professions and tests. And for some reason, NCARB, National Council of Architecture Registration Board, didn't get considered essential. And we were not a part of this program, but a lot of people who did, a lot of organizations and tests that don't work with this health, safety, and welfare of the public were considered essential, like dog walkers and gambling counselors and health and wellness coaches. And so what was happening was when a health and wellness coach wanted to schedule an exam, they would see all the test dates. And someone actually might, someone taking the architect exam might have a test date, but someone, you know, a gambling counselor could come right along and take our test dates. And the fact that we weren't a part of this program, and, you know, I don't know, some NCARB dropped the ball with Prometric. It was a huge miscommunication. Really, it affected lots of people's exams, and people were getting canceled. But they finally got it all sorted out, and it seems like things are getting back to normal now.
Nice. So are your students getting to schedule exams now? What do you hear?
Well, and then, like, so many things happened. That's kind of like everything in a quick summary. But I ended up connecting with one of the guys from NCARB, and I had a meeting with them, and they said June is going to be a terrible month for testing, but July looks a lot better, and August looks better, and September is even better. But so I would say right now we are on track to get back to normal. Things are actually looking pretty good on the testing front, but it's been slow. But it took us, we were supposed to be back to testing on June 1st, and that did not happen until June 8th. And the very first person to walk in and pass an exam was actually one of my boot campers, which I was really happy with. So,
Nice.
but yeah.
What does he mean we're supposed to get back to, what does he mean that June is supposed to be bad for testing?
Well,
because they've already fought up all
yeah, because they're doing social distancing inside the Prometric centers. So they're only doing like 50% capacity. You got to wear a face mask while you're taking the test. There's tons of protocol, lots of cleaning on their end. And yeah, so they're just doing low capacity testing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And what was interesting,
but so do they think it's going to change in August?
It's going to get better.
Is a ways away.
It's going to get better. Now, one of the things that happened, it was back when the pandemic first happened, Drew, the NCARB wasn't communicating. They were not, everything was through customer service.
Yeah,
they were talking at us and not with us. And then all of a sudden NCARB says, you know, we're going to do a webinar. We're going to do this webinar, and we're going to get everyone on the same page, and let's talk to you guys and hear what's going on. They get everyone on a web. I think there were like 1,000 people there. They get everyone on a webinar, and they go, good news, everyone. We got great news. We're going to do remote proctoring. So, and we're changing the architect exam to ARI 5.1. And in 5.1, we're going to create a system where you can take the architect exam at your own home. And everyone goes, and then they say, like, we don't have a timeline, and we're just getting started with working on this. So, you know, keep your ears peeled. And I like flipped out because no one had tested for like 2.5 months at this point. And we're like, this is such a distraction. Don't tell us you're going to give us remote. We need this right now if you're going to do it. And yeah, they got everyone all excited about it, but they didn't give us a timeline. They didn't give us any details. And when I talked to NCARB the other day, when we had our meeting, it sounded like they're way far off. They're like, all these people are getting excited about it. They're going to be done with their exams by the time they figure this thing out.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. And, you know, they explained, I've always been a skeptic of this idea because the security with the architect exam is through the roof. And, you know, and there's a reason
they don't let you bring in tissues.
Yeah. There's a reason
it's allergy season and your nose is dripping runny snot everywhere. And then they're like, oh, here's 2 tissues for you. Like, we got to count them when you bring them back. It's so dumb. Yeah.
And it's because we're protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. If you cheat the architect exam, you know, you're cheating the health, safety, and, you know, of the public. Whatever.
So if they're taking it that seriously, there's no way they could do a self-proctoring at home.
Exactly. And I've been the biggest skeptic of this idea. And when I met with NCARB, they really took the time to explain to me how this whole thing works and how it's secure. And like, it sounds like, I don't know. I don't want to get into, I'll let NCARB explain it. But even after they explained it to me, I said, I still don't think this is going to work because, you know, someone's going to set up a camera behind them that's hidden that you don't even see, and it's shining right on the screen. Like, people are going to, like, I don't know. I just don't think it's secure. I just don't think it's a viable option. And yeah, it was like, it was and I said to NCARB, I said, it was
obviously,
it was a distraction, and it worked. And I don't think they should have ever announced it.
Was?
Yeah, I don't think they should have ever announced it. And
so you think they were trying to like distract people for a while?
Calm down. We're working on it. We're gonna have it, but they'll have a.
It sounds like
vaccine.
It sounds like that's either clearly trying to manipulate people to be distracted for a while, get them off of one thing, or just obviously premature to say something like that. Like, how could you possibly run that exam and think that you could get the processes in place to test it and become certain? Like, I wonder how long they go through testing exam questions.
Yeah.
Like, they must spend like a long time testing questions before it actually makes it on the exam. You got to imagine they got to take at least that long on this whole process, and it's a whole new thing. You're opening up a whole new can of worms. Like, anybody who knows how to design anything should know that designing that system would take just a long fucking time. You can't just like the coronavirus is going to be over before you can
push this thing through. Yeah, you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And what where my baggage comes in is ARI 5.1 doesn't even work properly. Like, they haven't
5.1.
Or, I mean, I'm sorry. Let me back up a second. ARI 5.0 doesn't. 5.1 is what the new test is going to be called when they do the
yeah. Okay, I gotcha.
5.0 doesn't even work. Computers are crashing all the freaking time inside the testing centers, and like, they never officially like nailed it. Like, there's tons of bugs in their software. They never got it taken care of. And part of where like I get angry and all my baggage comes in is when I hear them talking about remote proctoring, and I say, I wish you would just fix I wish you would fix the existing problems and not open a whole new can of other problems, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I made these 2 really long videos about all the NCARB stuff. But
so are they still moving forward with the idea of like remote proctoring?
Yes, but from what they told me, it didn't sound like they're very far along. They're watching. So, like, there's other professions.
Like, let's say coronavirus subsides. Let's say it happens in 6 months from now. It's like, totally, we got it under control. You know, are they going to roll that out next year?
They don't even have it didn't even sound like they knew exactly which company they were working with to help them figure this thing out. But they're still in the early phases of it. And
that's somebody in the office agreed in principle to the idea that, hey, let's create a board to go explore this thing. And then they prematurely told everybody, yeah, we're doing this. That's ridiculous.
Well, that's just one of many, many issues that I address in all those videos that I've been talking about for the past week. Yeah, the whole thing's crazy. And I didn't want to get involved, but I got involved. And part of it, Drew, you know, between you and I and this podcast, the reason why I didn't want to get involved was because in 2018, the AIA National reached out to me about, working, like, I did this whole thing. We're trying to get the AIA National to work with the ARI prep industry. And, it like couldn't have gone worse. AIA's got their story. I have my story. It was a huge falling out. And the reason I didn't want to make these NCARB videos was because it took its toll. It took like my own mental health. It took a serious toll on me. I put a lot of time, money, and energy into this whole thing. I lost friends because of it. And my friends, got impacted because of it. It was a huge disaster. And all of a sudden people were like, Mike, this thing with NCARB, we wish you would speak out. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, dude, I know what you're talking about. I feel like I've been there, kind of like fighting against the bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
It's when it's not going to move. I don't know, man. I have a hard time believing that that's ever going to work. My attitude is generally get your head down, get the fuck out of the system so that these people don't have power over you anymore.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I don't know if I ever told you this. When I was in college in my second year, they brought in all these students that just be like, hey, architecture is super hard. what do you guys think? How do you guys think we could improve the program? And like, we elected people from our studios to go talk. They selected like 2 from each studio, and they were like, so what's happening is you guys are stacking all the classes in the first 2 years. In your first 4 semesters, you're taking like between 18 and 21 credit hours. And then you got like 13 or 14 at the end. Like, let's average out at 14 or 15. And then you're not burning out these freshmen who are just getting on campus for the first time. They're just learning out how to do studio. That's ridiculous. And so the teachers were like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, let's do that. And then they bring we had this nice flow chart. All right. And we had this flow chart where it has like little squares for each little class you have to take, and it's designated which semester it is. Yeah. And there's a little bit of flexibility in it, but more or less like, here's the plan, which class you're taking, when, exactly what semester, and all that. And then there's prerequisites in there too as well. And then when they made those changes, they were like, yeah, so we listened to your guys' approach, and we're gonna make these changes. But what you're gonna have to do now, what your class is gonna have to do now, is you have to take summer classes, because we're gonna offer this class in the fall, and you guys have to have a prerequisite that you're not gonna have in the fall, so you gotta take it in the summertime. And we were like, are you kidding me? You came out here asking us what to do. And then the way they told us was ridiculous too, man. They fucking stood up there in front of us. They took us into the auditorium and told us what's happening. Mind you, remember when I told you we had a flow chart? They didn't show us a flow chart. He had it there on his paper. And I was like, when are we going to get to see the flow chart? He's like, I was not ready to show anybody yet. Are you fucking kidding? You haven't prepared this? Dude, if I stood up there, I had to restrain myself to not yell at this dude. I'm the one who asked him that. And I was like, and I restrained so hard. To this day, I'm not sure if I did it right or not. I really wanted to tell the dude, bro, if I stood in front of you and told you my design without floor plans, without a drawing, without diagrams, you wouldn't let me finish. Why are we supposed to let you finish? You changed the stuff, and now you're telling us we have to take summer classes. When I busted my ass so I didn't have to take summer classes, and now you're telling me I had to come in and take summer classes.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, he's not even answering the fucking questions we're asking, because it's like they kept reinforcing, we're not adding any new classes. Well, it's like, okay, so if you're not adding any classes, they got to be coming from somewhere. So like, where are they coming from? And he couldn't answer that. So I'm like, show us the diagram. He couldn't show us the fucking diagram either. And then it was executed terribly, the announcement, you know? And like, it sucked. It's such a common complaint, but it happens all the time where you're like, I like what they did. I hate the way they told us. And sometimes, you just gotta suck it up when that happens.
Yeah.
But what was especially frustrating about it all was that it's not like, oh, this is gonna be annoying for a week or two. It's like, I have to spend my summer. Like, what if I had studied abroad the year before? What if I hadn't studied abroad the year before and I was supposed to go to Spain that summer, you know?
Yeah.
You're telling me I would have had to miss out summer. Or the other alternative is you could have taken all those classes in the fall. So it's like, well, you have an option. You could take it in the fall, but then you're taking like 21 or 22, like 24 hours or something like that. It's like, you're not really giving anyone an option. You're strong arming people into taking summer classes.
It's crappy they didn't phase this in, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, not this year, next year, this is the new policy. This is how things are going to go. But yeah, it's maddening. And I think part of what's the frustration with kind of what you're talking about in the NCARB situation is there's no one that, like, with NCARB, like they're in charge. They're the boss. They don't have a boss, you know, we can't complain to anyone. And there's all these issues with NCARB and no one knows what to do and where to go or what, you know. And that was part of why I made that video, is because like what do we do? Like, I brought up, like, 10, 15 like serious problems with NCARB, like, but no one knows what to do, and there's no one to talk to, and this and that, and that's what we're dealing with. And I think the frustrating piece is it just doesn't, like, here we are in 2020, it doesn't feel like we're making progress. Like, it's the same NCARB. Many years ago when I started, when I graduated architecture school and just started working on my exams, nothing's changed. There's so much, inefficiencies, problems, issues. It's backwards. They're not good communicators. They don't work properly.
It's a lack of communication. It's a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
And it's happening everywhere. Like, I'm hearing stories about high school teachers who, people I know work with, who are like gym teachers. There's gym teachers right now who are telling their students to giving them assignments like design a workout plan. Whereas if they were in school right now, they would be playing basketball. They wouldn't be doing more paperwork. And they're doing paperwork for all other 7 or 8 classes that they're taking. And they're at home and they're on some iPad because the teacher's not there. The parents are stressing out because they're trying to manage their kids while they're doing their job. And we got gym teachers giving out unnecessary assignments. We got teachers giving out insane amounts of work to students when they aren't even there to teach. And that's been my major frustration with like school, with things like NCARB. It's really, it's this notion that like somebody has power over you. And I hate to compare it to like what's going on, because it doesn't, like with the police brutality and all that stuff, because like the loss of life doesn't compare to frustrations with taking exams and schoolwork or whatever. But it is similar in that it is someone with power with a lack of empathy for the people they have power over.
Oh yeah.
And
absolutely.
I'm so frustrated by that. Like, and like, that I feel I've been frustrated by high school teachers, middle school teachers, the college system. Granted, I could find plenty of good teachers and goodness in that system too. And it probably outweighed the bad, probably. I really do think it did. I really do think that the good of school outweighed the bad, but I had such frustration towards that system. But it's easy enough to say, look, I'm just going to like put my head down, power through, and graduate from this high school, get out of this small town. I'm going to get out of this small university, get to the city I want to live to. I'm going to get my exams done so I don't have to deal with any of this bureaucracy. Unfortunately, there's some things you can't change, like if it's coming down to race, you can't change that. And that's what's so terrible,
Yeah. That's why I don't work for the government anymore.
Dude,
bureaucracy.
I feel like working for the government would be the worst job.
Oh my God. And the politics and this team and that team. And dude, I don't know. I did it for a while. I was good at it. And then it was when I knew I was done with it. And I mentally checked out and I just didn't care anymore. And what's weird was that was actually when I started to actually do the best at my job, was when I didn't when I was just kind of phoning it in. I would show up every day, but mentally I was somewhere else. I don't know. It's tough.
It's kind of soul destroying though, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. But
we got a couple government jobs in the office, and New York City has, like, I think the New York City government is the biggest employer in the state of New York. And so we were doing something for an office for some department or whatever. And I don't know the total ins and outs, so I can't speak on like the entire stories. So I want to leave out some details, but like the principal who was dealing with that one, I remember him over the phone one time. He was like, look, I guess you guys work for the government, so you don't understand, but like, we got to run a business.
Yeah.
Our business has to make money. So you can't just call up in the middle of CDs and start changing the designs on things. We had an agreement about what we were doing. And for you to come back and start making, you want to change the furniture package 3 and 4 and 5 times. Like we didn't budget for that. You can't just go do that. And so like, I think, we ended up getting fired or termed. I don't know who fired who, but that we had a contract with some department in the city that got straight up terminated because they operate within a different system.
Yeah, it's a different type of client working on these government agencies and the low bid construction.
And they don't have to do well to get paid.
Yeah. They
have no skin in the game, as Nassim Taleb would say. Like their paycheck is not contingent on being successful. They're getting paid regardless. So why would they be good? Why not just drag your feet?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. A big part of my job though in the city, and I was the owner's rep, the project manager, and what drove me nuts was a big part of it. It was to train contractors. They would hire, it was in some ways it was community service, teaching them how to write a change order and what the process was and how to work with the government. That was the big part of my job. And it was fun for a while. I loved it. It was a good job, but I needed to move on at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. So that's my world, Drew. What have you been working on, man?
So last week we did not record because I was working on.
That's right.
I was with AI in New Jersey. Brian Penchow, who I met at the Young Architect Conference.
Well, look at
He and I bumped into each other out walking around Portland one morning, both looking for breakfast. So we ended up grabbing breakfast together. That was right before my keynote address too. So I was nervous about the keynote. We were talking about it, and me and Brian hit it off. He's a cool guy. I like that guy a lot. He knows a lot about. I love picking his brain about real estate because he did with the firm he was working at the time. He had some real cool ideas about stuff that they were doing with real estate development. He described it as the dark side, and I think that he left that office not long after that conference. But anyway, I like Brian a lot. So he reached out to me I guess it was a few months back now, and he said, they're talking about putting together this CEU for AI in New Jersey. It's going to be on social media for architects. And so I know you've spoken very highly of like the AI New Jersey crowd.
Yeah,
I know I like Brian, so I said immediately, yeah, I'll do it. Let's go. And then obviously with the Corona stuff going on, it ended up like we were going to be doing live talks, and it was going to be a panel discussion, but then it ended up getting canceled because of the coronavirus, and then it was more about it was on Zoom, and so it went well. It was myself, it was Brian, and then Stacy. I always mispronounce her last name. Klush.
Oh, I don't know how to say her name. Stacy Kleish. I don't know. Oh man. Just say Stacy. Stacy.
Good old Stacy.
Yeah, I love her. She's cool. I don't know how to say her last name, but I love her.
Yeah, she's awesome. And her and Bill, William J.
Martin. Yeah. Well, was he wearing a bow tie?
Of course he was wearing a bow tie. I didn't even somehow. I don't know how I know this. I don't know how I originally started following that guy on Twitter, but I've been following him on Twitter. You know what I think there was? There's an article out there by Mark LePage that I think he published back in like 2010 or something like that. And it was like, here's like the top 25 architects to follow on Twitter. And I went and followed all of them. He's on that list. And I don't know if Mark LePage ever went back and like edited. He might have updated that blog post over the years a few times. So maybe he uploaded it. But I think I've been following Bill since like day one on Twitter, since I got on Twitter. So yeah, he's great. He's super positive. He had some good things to share. Actually, I got my notes.
Let's go through them.
From that I took because I was impressed by hearing him say. Bill says he DMs journalists. He says he finds journalists who are writing about stuff. He'll DM them. He'll say, "Hey, I liked your article about X. Comment about it a little bit," and then say, "Hey, if you ever need like an architect to comment on something, let me know." Yeah. And he's been featured, and he says he's been featured in all kinds of news articles. I think he said he's been on TV, like CNN or Fox or something like that. And I hadn't seen him on there. He only mentioned it briefly, and we didn't really go back to it. But I thought that was a genius move. And he was talking about Twitter in a way of like networking with other people, which I totally agree with. I don't do a good job doing that on Twitter. Yeah. For some reason, like I don't like Twitter. I don't like having it be abbreviated. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'd rather talk for 20 minutes about some random thing, talk about the nuances or whatever, cramming it into like 140 characters or whatever the limit is. I feel like there's always something that somebody misunderstands, and then you're explaining stuff in 140 characters, and that all sounds like a nightmare. But I love the idea of Twitter. I love the idea of like networking and stuff like that. And Bill seems like he does a great job of doing it.
That's cool. He's a great guy. I love Bill. There's a site I looked at once called Help a Reporter, and I think it's some kind of reporter, like you say, I'm an architect, I'm a source, I'm an architect. And
you know why I know about that site?
How?
I know about that site because they wrote about it in Ryan Holiday's book called Trust Me, I'm Lying. Okay. I did a YouTube video about this a while back, and the whole thing, it explains this whole system of what it means to be a blogger and how they don't really get paid a whole lot. They only get paid based on clicks. And so going back to the idea of, it's similar to the idea of what we talked about just a minute ago of like government employees not being incentivized to do better. People who write blogs are not incentivized to write accurate articles. They're incentivized to write articles people are going to click on. And people click on articles that are incendiary and trigger fear or some kind of emotion. And it's actually the emotions that are regulated by a part of your brain called the amygdala. It's called like the lizard brain. It's like in the back of your brain at the bottom. It's called the lizard brain because even lizards have this. Dogs have this, and they have some development that allows them to have emotions. But like the most fundamental kind of life thing is regulated by the amygdala. It regulates hunger, sexual drive, fear, and is worried about dying. It says, I'm hungry, get me out of here. And, that's all it does. So that is located so close to your spinal column that it basically overrides everything else, all your higher order models of thinking. So these blog posts, these bloggers are incentivized to trigger those types of responses in people. And so now they got to write incendiary articles, and they got to find some random source, and they got to get out faster. They got to be the first one to put it out. Yep. And so they get their sources from this stuff on here. The author of this book explained how when he was the head of marketing for American Apparel, he would like be a source on there. And he had like a bunch of fake aliases, and he would just pump out whatever he needed people to pump out. He would like be a source or whatever to get people to write these incendiary articles about American Apparel and then get more views for American Apparel.
I should be a source and start to change the conversation or what direction we need it to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, the only way it's going to go is like more scary, I think.
Yeah.
More divisive.
Yeah. That's cool though. So Bill talked a lot about Twitter, using that.
One of the other things they talked about was how do you handle negative comments, right? And so, and you and I have talked about this a lot, but you and I are talking about it from a different perspective, right? Because you and I are talking about how do we grow an online presence and an online audience to have an online audience. You're running your business off of it, and I'm trying to launch off this business reviewing portfolios, but in general, it's a little bit different. People we were talking to are architecture firms, and they're trying to amp up their social media stuff, right? So their question specifically was, how do you deal with like angry clients, former clients who come in and attack you on your social media platforms because they were dissatisfied or disgruntled, And Bill took the lead on this answer. He gave a great answer. He said, never be negative. He said, you never be negative to negative comments. And he explained the story about how somebody he knew reached out to him, and it was like Christmas Eve or something. And they were like, we got this client and like we did this job for them, but like they're not happy about it. And now they're like blowing up our social media with all these negative and hateful comments. And he talked them through it. He's like, you go in and you apologize. You say, look, sorry, we did the best that we could. And, you don't get defensive. And I wish I could remember the exact words he said, because like the way he explained it was really good. But, I feel the need sometimes to get a little bit defensive. Mm-hmm. When I respond to negative comments, sometimes I'll throw it back at him a little bit. And he made me think maybe I shouldn't do that. I do think you should stand your ground. And I only recently came around on that.
Yeah.
I used to think, oh, don't give it oxygen. That's what someone told me. They're like, don't feed the trolls. Don't give them oxygen. But that didn't work for me. What's worked much better for me has been standing up for myself. But the way Bill talked about it, it sounded like he was very positive. And I could tell that by speaking with Bill too. He's a very positive dude. I like that.
But I would also say too, I think newer bloggers, newer social people newer to the scene think that I thought this way too, is I thought that I was like opening the world for criticism and, everyone's going to make fun of this article that I wrote and this and that. And I would say, generally speaking, yes, I've had my handful of haters and people that have given me a hard time about stuff that I've said and this and that. But generally speaking, I feel like it doesn't happen that often. And I think it's the less experienced people think that it's more of a risk when it's really not.
Right. Yeah. I'll say that like I have not had a ton of negative comments. I have had some, but to be honest, I had less than I expected.
Yeah.
I expected there to be a lot more. And I think that I probably remember them more. I kind of pay less attention to them now.
Yeah. I would say
negative ones.
95% of my negative comments I actually enjoy them. I appreciate them because it's just BS. Someone's got an issue with something ridiculous and I enjoy it. But but yeah, there's about 5% of them actually do sting sometimes. Someone said something to me today that I didn't like. I didn't like what they said. It hit me in the heart, but it is what it is. It's part of the territory.
There was this project back in Atlanta that was going on, and I was working on the CDs when I moved to New York, and it was a weird little project. We can riff on this a little bit actually. It was the site was all right. So there was like on a corner. It was kind of on a corner of some streets, but it's like, okay, so here's a corner, here's a lot, here's one, and here's one back up here. So it wasn't technically on the corner, but it was like an acute angle of the way that the streets went. So this woman owned a house on the back one at the acute angle. And then there was another, it backed up to this other lot, and the lot was shaped all funny. So she already owned this house. So she bought the other lot that's adjacent. The backyards basically are aligned, but like the line was all weird. And she had us redraw the property lines a little bit. But then the other major problem with the site was that there was a stream that went in the front of the property between the street and the bulk of the lot. So, we got stream riparian buffers. I think it's national. It's definitely in Georgia. I think it's state. I think it's federal and state riparian buffers. And in Georgia, they tack on even more. So you can't build within certain dimensions. And I forget what they are now, but I think it's something like 25 feet. And we went and got a variance to build a bridge over this stream to then build a house on the back on this pretty steep hill. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, this property is not developable. Yeah. You can't develop this property because of the stream. There's no driveway. There's no access. You can't get a car in there, let alone construction vehicles, to actually build a house. Mm-hmm. And so it was just basically a wooded lot. So we went on we had to go through the city. We had to get variances and all this stuff, man. And the neighbor was not happy.
Not my backyard.
The one on the corner was cool, but like the next one next door, from what I've heard, it's an old lady. I don't really know, but I think like the lady next door has been pissed about it. And dude, we had to send notifications because it was on the river. You had to send letters, certified mail letters to everyone.
I remember that.
200 feet downstream and 100 feet upstream, something like that. I may be wrong on the dimensions, but it's something like that. And we notified them, send them drawings. We sent them the drawings in like 8.5 by 11 copies. And they were allowed to email in or send in their complaints or their concerns about it. And of course, like these people are not engineers, so they're not really looking at the bridge construction and giving any meaningful feedback. Like one of the stuff we were getting was like, this wooded lot is a sanctuary for birds. And meanwhile, it's in a neighborhood called Lake Claire. There's Lake Claire Park that's literally like a block away. And there's wooded trees everywhere. This is Atlanta. They got tons of trees in Atlanta. And they're claiming about like, oh, it's destroying a bird sanctuary, which is just it's total BS, And so then they were pushing back on that, but that doesn't give someone the power at the city to cancel the project. Like that's not within the scope. So, I mean, of course they ended up approving it because we did everything by the books. We had an engineer, we knew what we were doing. We had surveys and we posted the sign on site. We did everything we needed to do. But, so I left before construction got started. Then after construction got started, I heard that there was they cut down the trees, and then this woman started complaining about the trees. Oh God. And they posted about it on social media. And by the way, one of these trees was like leaning over the street. It was gonna fall on the street one day and take out the telephone lines. And they cut down some of these trees, and one of them was a big ass tree, man. It was like at least 4 feet in diameter. So that one was huge, but I don't know if they were planting new trees because they got to make up for the caliper that you cut down on those projects. You either have to plant them back in some type of ratio, or you got to pay a fee. And I think they might have ended up just paying the fee because it was a super wooded lot. I don't think there's really room for many more trees. But anyway, they they posted a photo on Facebook or something, like the office did, and this woman was like, "There's been some problem. I can't believe you're posting, and I can't believe that you're posting about this. Like you're proud about it. That you cut down all these trees. Like totally virtue signaling about how dare you cut down these trees when we had gone through like all the legal processes to do that, and it was okayed with the city arborist. And now, but then there was something else that had gone wrong though. I think that they tried to shore up the land, the grade on either side of the stream. They had there's a repair silt fences and I think sandbags or something in there, maybe hail bays of hail. They try to stabilize the dirt. They try to stabilize that from running down into the stream. And there was an error when the contractor had installed it, and some of that stuff came off. So then they did get dirt and grade into the stream that then went downstream. So like that should not have happened.
Yeah.
But they got this neighbor at the property who is watching the site like a hawk.
Oh God.
And calling the city anytime someone drops off. Like I think that they have a construction zone for like staging that occupies some parallel parking spots in that neighborhood that no one ever, anytime I've driven by, no one's used them during the week. And she's sitting there like a hawk. They drop them off, and she calls the city right away before anybody can get there to do anything with it. The city has dropped a stop work order, and it's like, dude, that's such a pain in the ass.
God,
so
nightmare.
So it does happen that you get these like people who are mad at your architecture firm on your social media account. And, you know, there's maybe even a lot of people watching this who may not even be like you or I trying to build a following online, but maybe they're being asked to manage like the Instagram account on their office, you know? And dude,
I block them, man. I block them, you know, if something like a situation like that.
My gut wants me to do that too. I think that this is probably not the most effective way. I think that I like what Bill said. It's probably more effective. It's not, dude. It would take a lot of self-control for me.
Well, one of the things that's been happening lately, I see on social media, is that account, the Archie Shame, where it posts job offers, unpaid job offers. Hey, you want to come work in our New York City office? We can't pay you, but we'll give you a Metro card or something like that. Whenever they post those, people go freaking bananas and go after their Instagram accounts and start posting, and they just block you. I block people sometimes too from the Young Architect account. A lot of times these people that they tag me in posts. So when they tag me like Young Architects in this picture, and if you look at my profile picture, it's pictures of everyone else's stuff, not mine. And people keep doing it to me over and over and over again. And that's when I either ask them to stop or I just block them. And then if blocking them, it actually makes it easier because then I just automatically removes all those tags in. But yeah.
Do you know Jocko Willink?
No.
He's a retired Navy SEAL, and then he was a Navy SEAL commander. He trained the Navy SEAL. He was like in a training program to like train them on tactical stuff. And now he's retired from that, but now he's talking about leadership and advising businesses and stuff. Because if you can tell a man, go take down that machine gunner, you can tell him finish your reports. And hearing this guy talk is amazing because, like, dude, you want to talk about like skin in the game? This dude's got skin in the game, man. They learned how to lead and execute, get stuff done as a SEAL team task unit or whatever they're called, and he crushes it. He was on Joe Rogan today, and I listen to his podcast a lot, and at Jocko's podcast a lot, and books and everything. And this guy was talking about, you got to be empathetic. He's talking about, especially in light of like what's going on today. He's like, you got to be able to go in and ask questions and talk to someone and be like, hey, like, so tell me what's going on here. And, when you make a mistake, own up to it. So I wonder like how would Jocko handle like the disgruntled neighbor?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that there's a degree of empathy, but then you also obviously have to stand your ground, stand up for the truth. Maybe
Well, it also, I mean, like, let's go back to our NCARB conversation too. I think part of the problem with the NCARB is they talk down to us, and they don't talk with us. They talk at us, and it's not a
Mhm.
person. It's an unnamed person at customer service dictating instructions at you.
Yeah.
And I think when we get
So
human,
that's a great example, right? So in a situation like that, right? So if you're trying to communicate with somebody like that, I think it would probably be most effective to, like, with the person you're talking to, say, look, I understand that, like, first of all, this is crazy times, with the coronavirus, and this is kind of uncharted territory. And, you're just like one person within this giant organization, like this big organization that's NCARB. I don't know how big it actually is, but like it's an important organization that has ways of doing things. But like, why don't you, and then start asking questions like, why don't you feel like it's important to get this why don't you get this categorized as a essential testing? I think you kind of ask questions, ask your way there. But like, I think it requires an amount of empathy.
Yep. Yeah.
When I was in, again, kind of feeling like I was getting screwed over by college when I was in my last year of architecture school. I was in the honors department in architecture. I was in the honors department, which is a different department. They had people in every different major, but I think I was the only one that started out in honors in architecture and finished in architecture in honors. And I busted my ass to maintain honors. I took extra classes. I took honors level classes. And sometimes that meant more work. That meant vacation. That meant trips places when it wasn't convenient for my studio grades and everything like that, man. It came down to final year, 5th year, and we were picking studio. And of course, one of the deals with honors was that you got early selection of classes, early registration. But of course, the architecture department never had their act together until the 3rd round of registration. So, technically the honors advisor can only log us in and give us the hours before phase 1. She's not really allowed to do that before phase 3, but she did it most of the time for us because architecture wasn't really doing their job. They didn't have everything up in time. So then I bring this up with them again because it's 5th year. It's been happening 8 or 9 times by this point. And then they ended up saying like, okay, well, you send us an email. Like, we're not going to have the stuff up until like right before, but we'll get you logged in. You tell us which one you want. So I told them which studio I wanted, gave them the CRN number or whatever it was, everything. Wake up in the morning to verify, because again, I don't trust these people. I don't trust anything to go right. And they had mixed something up, and they had the wrong teacher named under the wrong CRN number, and then they switched it. And so then I was not in the class that I was supposed to be in. And I busted my ass. Like this was the deal. I was in honors to get this. This was the main reason why I maintained honors status. And here it was, it didn't work out. I was pissed, and I had to go work that day because I was working that summer for doing some construction work. I had to take off work and go into the architecture office and try to get this thing straightened out. And I was pissed. I was tired. I was mad. Yeah. And I was talking to this lady at the secretary's desk who did this, and she was getting mad and I was mad. I think I said at one point, like, look, I don't want to be mad, but this is ridiculous. And she like almost broke down. It was like, let me tell you, Drew, that goes a long way because I got yelled at by so-and-so yesterday, and the department chair is yelling at me because of this other thing. Yeah. And I'm stressing. And she was stressing
following
out.
Orders.
And I was just trying to speak honestly, and I didn't want to be mad. But it was through that, it was a moment of empathy between her and I, where it was like, okay, we're human beings here right now. Yeah. We don't need to be in here yelling at each other. Yeah. And like, ultimately, the one I wanted to get into was filled up and I couldn't get in. I ended up in another one it was probably worked out better for me anyway, which I didn't want to hear at the time. She told me that day. I didn't want to hear it, but she was right. It did work out in the long run. And, yeah, I think back to that a lot though. Even when you're mad, sometimes it's important to say like, look, I don't want to be mad. Understand see the human being on the other side. If you want them to see you as a human being, you got to be able to see them.
Yeah. We're just doing the best that we can, Yeah. Yeah. I actually said that about NCARB in my videos too, I don't think they purposely tried to screw us, and make this mistake. I think it was the ball got dropped. Someone made a mistake happen, but it wasn't intentional. So.
Yeah, and I think that's probably common in the bureaucracy systems. I think it becomes commonplace to kind of just be following orders.
Yeah.
And you expect someone farther up the line.
It makes
you don't
sense at
want to
the
step out of
top.
line.
It makes sense at the top of the totem pole, these decisions, but then they don't think how it trickles down and this and that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's all about leadership. That's what Jocko says. Everything's about leadership.
Yeah. Tell me more about this social media thing, this event. Any other big takeaways you had from that?
They were talking about, they were asking a couple of like good specific questions, like hashtags. And I feel like I don't use hashtags a whole lot on YouTube, but they were talking about like Googling which hashtags to use.
I don't think it matters. I don't think people are finding information. I don't know. I used it more many years ago, but I don't know. I don't use them now. We use it for the Young Architect Conference. We have a hashtag because it's kind of cool when you're at an event to click the hashtag and to see all the other people who are at the events, Maybe there's a picture of me inside those hashtags or something, but yeah, I don't think it's so oversaturated. I don't even know if it's really that helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that on Instagram that there are some people who cruise through those things, and again, I'm just speculating because I'm not active on Instagram either. I need to step up my game, but they were saying I hadn't thought about this for some reason. I never thought about it. Like, why don't you just Google which hashtags you should use? And I don't know. That's something I think that I should probably check out a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I have, like my dog Molly. I have a hashtag Malls Across America, and if you click that, you say, "Oh, look, there she is in Kentucky. There she is in Maine. There she is in Texas. Here, look, she is in California." Like that's kind of cool. It's like a filing cabinet for information, but
yeah. One point that I'd actually made that I think is worth repeating. I found myself in a position back in my firm back in Atlanta where I was managing the social media accounts. Mm-hmm. And I was talking with my boss, and the principal at the firm, was very design oriented, and it was all about the details. And I could sense a little hesitation from him on like sharing some of the details or photos of the drawings that we were doing. And he was worried about other people stealing the ideas in a sense. And I disagree with that approach. And I told him this. Yeah. I was like, look, I think you want other people to be copying you. If the other people aren't copying, if the other people are not following you, you're not the leader. Right? Like you want other people to be following you. If you really are a great designer, which this principal was, if you really are a great designer and other people are copying you and then their style is like your style, you just created an ism. You can't be replaced.
Yeah.
And they're all going to come after you. And I don't know if I articulated this point to him well enough, but like, the other way I see it is like, okay, let's say some architect across town starts stealing your details. If you're the better designer, which, I assume you should be, if they're doing it better than you, they beat you,
Yeah.
Hats off. Like they did a better job. They own it now, not you. But assuming that you are the better designer, which, at this particular firm, I think you definitely would have been. All right. Somebody else is taking your details. If some client is going to go hire the poor man's version of you for cheaper, they're a cheapskate client anyway. And they weren't going to be a good client regardless. They weren't going to pay your fees. The low paying clients are the ones that had the most headaches. Is the ones like during my time there, we had a few clients who were just great clients, man. Like everything came in, money wasn't ever really that big of an issue, and they were the best clients. They ended up with the best houses because we didn't have all these fucking headaches about like, oh well, let's change the bathroom tile 6 times because this one's like a little bit cheaper per square foot. Yeah. And you want those good clients. I think that you should aim to be premium. And I mean, everybody's got a different approach, a different strategy for their business, but I think that in general, I would much rather be the premium architect, charging them more money for higher quality designs than trying to engage in this race to the bottom to be like, let's do something cheaper.
Yeah. I don't like this idea of worrying about people copying your details because, anyone could go down to the building department and pull the documents for what's being built and, make a photocopy of your details. Like, who cares? And I think that, like, the process of seeing architecture being made is such great social media fodder. And, it's not, I would say it's not a good way of thinking about about trying to grow a brand, is worrying about people stealing your details. So,
dude, if and when I start an architecture firm, you want to know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have packages online where architecture students would be able to download, like, here's the 3D model and the basic drawings you need to do your precedent study.
Yeah.
Because as an architecture student, dude, you're looking around for these. They make you do precedent studies. We have to do models of houses and stuff like that. And it'd be a pain in the ass to find one project that had all the drawings I needed. Because, like, the professor has their little checklist of, like, we have to have photos of all the elevations. You got to have the floor plan. You got to have some diagrams for it. You got to build the model. It's like, how are you going to build the model if you can't get all the drawings? And these presentation drawings just photocopied from architectural record.
Yeah.
Architecture record's pretty good, but it is not really close enough. Your model is not going to be as great.
Mm-hmm.
If you could help out some students like that, imagine how, like, do you think your firm would be more or less successful if every year there's like a dozen or 24 students across the world, architecture departments everywhere, making little mini copies of the house you designed? That's only going to help your business. They're going to go out and tell their parents about it. They're going to tell their family about it. Other architects are going to become aware about it because all the other kids in class are going to see it.
Drew, when I was a young man, it was the middle of the last recession and I was barely employed. I was looking for a job. I was looking for work. And one of the local architects, he's like, I don't have a job. I can't hire you, but I'd love, I'll have a chat with you. You're welcome to come to my office. And I showed up and this architect sat down with me for an hour and we talked about everything. And he gave me a tour of his firm. He showed me some drawings, his photos and all of his things. And he's like, if anything comes in, I'm struggling right now too. I'll keep you in mind. And while he never hired me or nothing, and, him and I remained friends after that, it made such a huge difference. And, still to this day, that man who took the time to talk to me as a young aspiring architect, it really made a big difference for me. And, my opinion is kind of moving forward. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. For me, I had a similar situation, and it wasn't around trying to find a job after graduating. It was trying to find a job one summer. And it was in it was in Charleston, South Carolina. And it was kind of too late to get an internship. Some other stuff and life stuff had been going on earlier that year and couldn't apply in time. But I ended up getting to shadow at this firm for like a day or two called Leo's Architects in Charleston. Dinos Leo was the principal, and his wife, whose name escapes me right now. But
I remember you've mentioned that you've talked about this guy before in one of your lectures or podcasts or something.
Yeah. I mentioned it in the keynote.
Yeah, the keynote at Young Architect Conference.
Because it was in talking with him that I remember sitting there that day, and like we were just talking about architecture in his office, and it was like what we did in studio, but it was coming from someone who actually knew because he had been doing it for like decades. And it was through talking to him that I knew sitting there in that chair that someone could totally do a YouTube channel doing this, and like that basically inspired me to like execute the YouTube channel I did.
That's awesome.
I still think about a lot of the advice he gave me to this day.
Yeah. It makes such a huge difference when you're just getting started in this career, these early impressions, and when people take a minute to, help you figure something out, it really has profound effect. Any other major takeaways from the social media event?
No, not much else. No other big takeaways.
Cool. I love AI New Jersey. They're a lot of fun to work with. I've done a bunch of lectures with them, and it's a really great group of people.
Yeah.
they're real funny with each other. Like, I don't know, William Martin. I bet everyone was cracking jokes on his bow tie or whatever.
Yeah, it was kind of sad because it was only the four of us talking, and like
yeah.
there was a chat going on, and I could tell that there was some stuff going on over in the chat. But Bill was cool though. He was cracking jokes on Brian. Brian was cracking jokes on him, so it was all good. I missed the most like not being able to go get a beer with those guys afterwards, because normally we were going to be out at like some pizza place in New Jersey, and so, but it was cool though. It was still a lot of fun.
Yeah, good for you, man. Any other speaking events coming up?
I mean, aside from the Young Architect Summer Series, no. Were you trying to lob that up for the mention?
Oh yeah. Well, no, I wasn't, but might as well talk about it now. Summer Series.
I know. I had to think about it. I was like, I do have something coming up. What is it?
Yeah.
It's the Summer Series, which I got to get you a write up still.
Yeah. I think this episode might not even be out, but it'll probably come out around the time the Summer Series is about to happen. But right now we're a month and a half away from Summer Series taking place. And we're just getting ready for it. Drew, you're gonna do something around portfolios, right?
Yep. Yeah. We're gonna talk about portfolios. We're gonna talk about. I got to do the write up for sure, but I think what it's gonna be is we're gonna talk about selecting the best projects of yours, curating them properly, but then also curating the images of those projects to explain them well, and assembling everything in a format so that people can consume it easily. Page layouts that repeat, and that kind of thing.
That's cool. Nice. I think it's so needed, some good advice around portfolios from someone that's good at talking about it,
Yeah, man. And again, going back to this firm, I keep mentioning it but never say the name. It's Robert M. Kane Architect in Atlanta. And during my time there, I've spoken highly about him as a designer. He's a great designer, and we won a lot of design awards while I was there. And we did like 7. I think we won 7 awards during my 4 years at the firm. Now, some of those were projects that were designed before I got on board, or they were like just finishing up. But I was the one doing the submittals, and so I worked with. And he already has like a wall full of awards, but I got to work with him like one-on-one, figuring out, hey, how do we submit the best ones to tell the story of this house, and getting to pick his brain, see what he thought about what worked, what didn't. I could see, okay, well, let's say maybe I was going to throw in these images, but he would come in, select a few other ones instead, and look at like changing the order. And I picked up some things from him that I wouldn't have known to do otherwise. I've gotten a lot better at it. And then he also got selected to be the jury head for an AIA South Carolina a design award, for some region of South Carolina. And so, he got to see on the other side. He got to see, hey, what types of projects are being submitted, how are they submitting them, and so he was able to kind of let me sneak a peek at some of these other submittals. So I've gotten to. And through being on the board himself, and that wasn't the only one he's been on the board for. He's been on design award boards in the past, and so he's been able to. I've gotten great feedback from him on like how do you curate a project and explain it well, because he's been on both sides, the one submitting it and the one who's the jury. Yeah,
it's and bringing this back to your little design portfolio for looking for a job, Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for your workshop, Drew.
Thanks, man. Me too.
It'll be good.
I think it's gonna be good for people, because also people kind of need a kick in the ass to like get it done, get some feedback. It's so easy to get lost in the echo chamber of your own mind. You got to be able to get that fire under you.
Yeah. Hey, let me tell you what I'm gonna present at the Summer Series.
All right.
It's not even fully cooked. But listen to it, and I'm just gonna spill the beans, because by the time this podcast gets released, this will be well underway. But so the first thing I was gonna do is, remember at the Young Architect Conference, I gave my entrepreneurship for young architects lecture as like the first thing, like the very first thing, and I kind of tell the story. It's really a lecture where I tell the story of graduating architecture school, working in firms, the government, starting an architect, starting a business, and I tell the story that hammers on three main ideas. It's trading your time for dollars. How else can we make a living that's not selling your time to a client, a boss, a project? Not the second is finding problems to solve that you can monetize. And the third is having multiple streams of income. And I hammer on those three ideas as I tell the story of Young Architect and kind of my story. And so I'm going to do that actually before the summer series as a free lecture, free webinar. I'm going to just give it away. And I'm going to use it kind of as a tool to promote the summer series. And I'm going to talk, so, I mean, that lecture's already done. It's already cooked. I'm going to make some edits to it. I'm going to change it a little bit, but I'm going to use it as a tool to kind of bring some awareness around the summer series. Then at the summer series, I was going to do kind of a part 2. And it's more about helping people start to figure out how to put the pieces together. In the first presentation, the one I'm going to give away, I talk about how I took my passions, my skills, my strengths, my education, my unique background, and I started looking at all this information, like what do I love to do and how do I make money or build a business or start this project or that thing and use this data. So the second lecture is going to be talking about what are your unique, things that skills, passions, things you love talking about. And it's going to almost be, this workshop's going to be mostly a journaling exercise. And we're going to do lots of writing and we're going to call all these pieces out. We're just going to pull pieces together. And then we're going to go through a series of journaling exercises. And then we're going to start brainstorming business ideas. And it's always going to be on the brainstorm level. Let's not get caught up with details. Let's just crank out. Let's just whip out like lots of different business ideas. All ideas are good. There's no such thing as a bad idea. The bad idea might take you to a great idea. And we're just going to do this huge brainstorm session as like an interactive workshop. And then take it from there, maybe kind of pick a couple of your favorites and then kind of whittle it down to one really great idea. And then what's the next step? Research something, look up this thing, probably, and just kind of identify that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still kind of hashing out what the whole thing looks like and how does it work. But that's what I'm excited about it. This is the kind of stuff I love to do, is put together workshops and public speaking things.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds like you would get everybody engaged within their own group doing something like that. It sounds cool.
Yeah. I mean,
I was
gonna say everyone's favorite subject is themselves, and let's focus on you for this, workshop, and let's really figure out what's working, what what your passions are, and how does all these pieces fit together. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So
do you think anyone would hold back, worried about someone else stealing their ideas?
I feel like ideas are cheap. It's the execution, the ability to execute the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's everything, So.
Yeah. I also think that you could even, I think Gary Vaynerchuk talks about that or something. He's like, bro, you can give out your ideas and most other people aren't even going to do it. He said, he was talking about how he's been giving out his ideas about business for a long time, trying to get people to do it. And so if you actually execute on building those businesses the way Gary Vaynerchuk tells them to, So but you think people are going to steal your ideas? So many people aren't going to do anything.
And that's the fun part, is to think of, I love getting on the high level and just brainstorming ideas and putting all the parts together. Maybe we look at it this way, or maybe we try it that way. And, it's just a workshop and just generating ideas, not getting stuck in details. Because I think that's where a lot of people get that's what kills the creativity, is when you start worrying about how does this thing really work, or, let's just crank out as many ideas as possible. I love doing that kind of thing, those exercises. So so we'll see. I'm excited. I'm still working it out. I was actually writing my outline today for that.
Nice.
Yeah. But what the beautiful thing is that the summer series is giving us an opportunity to I'm addicted to public speaking and going to conferences and meeting people and all of the things. And when the pandemic happened, it all went out the window. And to now just say, okay, we're going to create something new. Let's adapt. Let's figure out how do we keep doing this and do it online. And yeah, I'm excited for that new challenge.
Nice. Yeah, man. That's like, we need someone like you who can do all that, figure out those ideas and pull it off. Cause like exactly what you described, I struggle with that. I'm like, oh, but like, how would this actually work? That couldn't actually work. Fuck that. And then it's like, no, man, like I gotta be in the right headspace, and I can be. But if I don't set up the time in a group to go do that, or like set the time even just with myself to do that, to just brainstorm and not worry about the details, then the fear of the details creeps in. And then it's like, oh man, I don't know if I can get that done. Maybe it's not worth executing on. But yeah, it's important to distinguish.
Drew, one of the things I've learned about myself is when I spend a lot of time working on details and hashing out all the details, it takes me a while to get in that headspace, but I'm really good at seeing the bigger picture and also working in the details. But when I'm in the details way too much, it's really hard for me to zoom out and be creative and see the bigger picture again. It's like this, it's just changing scales. And when I'm in one scale too much, it makes it harder for me to work in the other scale. But I feel like I've gotten better with it as time's gone on. So.
Nice. Yeah, same here. I feel like I've specifically had to deal with that in architecture, dealing with these details and figuring out how does this really impact the big picture. And it took me a while to get the hang of it. And the firm that I used to work at, I think it was the most important there because like they cared the most about the overall design. That it had to look kind of, I don't want to say on brand because they didn't really use that very often, but it did kind of have to look like our style. And like you had to be designing the details and figuring out how this is going to work so that everything else works out. So that kind of going back and forth thing in just not to sound heady, but like in a tectonic way, right? Like you have to make sure that these actual details in the construction of the building are going to work both ways. But then that's almost easier. It can almost be easier than like dealing with the processes of building a business because there's no detail drawing on the page that you're working on. It's hard to say that you've worked on it. It's hard to say that you've made progress because you scribbled out some notes in your sketchbook. Yeah. You still got to go execute on it. It's a little bit more nebulous,
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. Yeah, man. Cool. Well, Drew, is there anything else we should talk about before we wrap up this podcast?
I think that's pretty good for tonight, unless you're thinking of something.
Yeah, we didn't have anything to talk about, but I feel like we've had no problems just rambling away for an hour and 15 or 20 minutes, whatever. I lost track.
I was prepared to talk about a story about a project that we're working on now, but we can save that for another time because that's a long story. I had plenty of stories
awesome
today.
All right, so let's wrap it up. Drew, it's been a good time chatting with you tonight, man. I wish 2 weeks didn't go by. I feel like a lot has happened.
Yeah, I know, right?
We didn't have a list of stuff to talk about, but we talked quite a bit. But yeah, I hope this conversation was helpful for people listening. And this is our new podcast with me and Drew. It's just gonna be us just shooting the shit. Just bullshitting. So send us a message and, let us know what you guys think. All right, team. Have a great day. It was great talking to you today. Take care.
Yeah, guys. See ya.